Oh yeah, you're probably not used to listening to yourself all the time.
No.
It's a weird experience, isn't it?
How are you doing this? I would totally wouldn't want it. That's cool.
Yeah, when we were at the radio,
I had no idea you didn't eat meat.
Yeah, this is Brian's therapy session right now.
Movements need, whether it's a movement of thought or spirituality or politics, you need an enemy. You need somebody to fight against.
Hey, I'm Brian Cauley.
I'm Dhani Oks.
And this is Constantly Varied, episode 4. Well, I think my first interview with him was what words are different in Irish English than Canadian English, because he's from Ireland.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Daddy, what's a nose? Nose.
What's a nose?
What's a chin? Like things a 4-year-old can think of.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, oh, what's a truck? Which would be lorry.
Yeah. So your dad started in your radio at age 4.
Yeah, and then I re-interviewed him. And then I re-interviewed him last year. So. Oh,
cool! We got to play that.
Yeah,
we got to do a little Brian Cauley, then and now.
Oh yeah, I should find the old tape.
You're gonna hear my kombucha pop. There you go.
Okay, kombucha, because I wasn't sure. Cool, not cool. What's
this one's really tasty. I got into it. Someone here is a big fan, and they kept on telling me to drink it. I researched it. At first, I didn't think it was anything very special. I was actually surprisingly ignorant about it, and I researched it, and it seems pretty legit. So a lot of people make their own. It's essentially like a fermented tea, I believe. I could be wrong about this. I think it has its origins in Russia or Eastern Europe. I could be wrong about that. I seem to recall reading that they fermented tea, and which also makes me really proud because I'm Russian. So anything Russian's, awesome. I'll drink it. Vodka, kombucha, whatever. So, I researched it a bit and it seemed legit. So I gave it a shot. Anything fermented is quite good for you if it's done right.
Okay. So like kimchi.
Kimchi is fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. Kimchi is really good. If you can get, a good kimchi from a Korean grocer, you're doing good. Your stomach's going to be pretty healthy.
I know where I'm going right. Oh man, I was at a 30th surprise birthday party. First of all, this was the most ridiculous thing because it's someone's 30th surprise birthday party.
Why is that ridiculous?
Because it was at their aunt's house. Okay. And so it was like really young cousins and a bunch of like parents and aunts and uncles. Uh-huh. So at some point we ended up in a bedroom and everyone but me doing vodka shots. Like the birthday girl, her cousin, and a couple of her friends. And we're like sitting on the ground. They're doing like vodka shots. Right. Using a lot of explicatives. And like, something.
Sounds like a good party.
Something spilled. Quick, you get the blow dryer. Dry it up. And I was like, what? Like.
I don't get this.
Yeah, like, why do we care? And then of course.
Get the blow dryer.
The birthday girl ends up puking in the washroom.
Oh, really? Yeah. I had a surprise birthday once.
Really?
You ever had a surprise birthday party?
No, never.
You know what's one of those?
No, wait, I did. Sorry. My ex-girlfriend probably would call me up and be like, what? I threw you a surprise dinner. So yes.
But was it a surprise dinner? Was it like a real party though?
It wasn't a party. It was totally just a dinner.
Yeah.
Not a party.
It's, I think it's one of those things people secretly, always want. They always want to have a surprise birthday party. Even if they won't admit it, I think everybody wants to feel like, there was a conspiracy of love and friendship that, essentially was, in your honor. And I remember I had one. This was really cool. It was back when the first academy opened, on the Gladstone. And I remember, going out with Sohail, who's my best friend and business partner. We started the academy together for those folks who don't know. And I remember I was having a really shitty day. It was like a Sunday and my birthday's in February. So the weather was miserable. And I was, I was really just working like at a feverish pace at that point. Like the business was just starting. And so I'm like, Sohail, man, we got to go out and do some flyering, right? We got to do up some flyers. And I remember him coming over and he was late and I was just in a really shitty mood. And I remember because I was like totally like just, it was one of those moods where I didn't want to be around anybody. I felt like, you know, I'd been working all day, so I felt kind of like nasty and, you know, I was in like, you know, my shitty clothes and we went out, we did all this flyering and my hands were freezing because it was cold out and, it was just a miserable time. And I was being such a dick to him.
Right. You're just like, you like, yeah, it's terrible. So,
oh man, yeah. I was being a total ass and I walk in, we come back to, and we walk in, to the gym and something just kind of felt weird. Like I thought I caught something out of the corner of my eye and it was just like, I had this just like weird spidey sense. I didn't know what it was. And I remember just kind of opening the door and just seeing like all my friends and like pretty much all the gym members, you know, surprise. And the whole place is decorated. Sweet. And I literally, I walked in and then I made a beeline right into the bathroom and just like hid for like a minute. I'm just like, I need to process this, you know, I need to, you know, figure out what's happening. And it was funny. And we had a great time. It was like, you know, we danced in the gym and had a pretty good party. And then, I got pretty drunk on vodka and whatever else. Yeah. One of my friends gave me one of my buddies gave me a bottle of Grand Marnier. And, that shit tastes good.
Yeah.
It was, Grandma, I don't think I ever had it before. And I just literally downed it during that party. I was walking around like I was like Rick Ross or something, you know, just like with like bottles in my hands. I'm just drinking, having
That's not normally something you hear someone's like, oh yeah, I just downed a bottle of Grand Marnier.
Yeah, it was tasty. It was really easy to drink. It's like an orange liqueur, right? So,
isn't it super sugary though? Like,
oh yeah.
How did you drink all of that?
I don't know. I'm pretty good. I can drink and eat a lot. I can drink and eat a lot. We were talking about cheat days before, but I started putting cheat days back into my life. I used to have a weekly cheat day, usually on Saturday, and I would just eat, just not even for nourishment, obviously, like just for sport, you know, just cause I could.
Eat for sport.
Eat for sport, man. I would eat, my best day ever. This was probably a PR in eating. I ordered some Domino's and it was, like a special they were having. So it was like a large pizza, 3 topping. And, it also came with a medium pizza, 3 topping. So I ate both of them in a sitting.
Just in case this large isn't enough.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know what I was doing. I'm like, this is clearly too much pizza, you know? And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just save it for dinner or something like that.
This seems wrong. Like, but you're still doing it.
It was a cheat day. There's no rules on cheat day. You know, you're supposed to eat anything you want. You essentially want to eat as much food as you can handle and probably get yourself a little bit sick. So you just don't do it again for a week. And I ate 2 pizzas.
That's like that you hear that, you know, those stories of like the son is smoking and the dad catches him. And he's like, all right, sit down and smoke this carton of cigarettes.
Smoke all these cigarettes. I'm gonna watch you smoke all these cigarettes. That's what it's like. So
Domino's is like, you're going to eat this other pizza.
Yeah. So anyway, for the final tally, if you're counting at home, it was a large, maybe it was an extra large pizza or whatever. And, followed by like a smaller version. And then they had cheesy bread. Domino's has amazing cheesy bread.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't taste real. It doesn't taste like actual food. I don't even think it's cheese. So I downed that and then I was still going. Like I was like, all right, let's see how far I can take this. And went downstairs to a little convenience store we had in the building and I bought, you know, those Sara Lee cheesecakes, the ones that come from the freezer, those really tasty ones. Yeah. So I bought one of those, ate it. And I was still going. I bought a bag of chocolate almonds and like a big big bulk bag of chocolate almonds.
A whole Sara Lee cheesecake.
Dude, it was fantastic. I think I at some point did a calorie calculation on that meal and it had to be around like 6,000 calories, something in that vicinity. And I was still good. Like I could probably still, at that point, I could have kept on going, but decided that it was probably a good idea to stop. So yeah, that was like the original epic mealtime.
This is, oh my God, that's.
Yeah, cheat day. Well, you know what? Everybody's got their theories on nutrition and whatnot. Cheat days are, I think for some people they work. For some people they definitely don't. I've gone through many experiments personally with cheat days. Right now I feel like it's an appropriate thing for me. Just with the amount of, I guess, like lifting I'm doing and, you know, just like squatting every day and, doing Olympic lifts in the afternoon, and squatting in the morning. So I feel that it's good for me anyway to have a big bulk up day on Saturday and maybe a little bit on Sunday and then eat pretty clean for the rest of the week. That's a pretty common recipe for a lot of lot of, athletes or people doing, barbell sports or bodybuilding and stuff like that. They'll eat pretty lean and then kind of have a blowout day. Some people won't eat, shit food or junk food. Some will just kind of stick to, more, I would say, like healthier carbs, right? Maybe doing just a lot more starch. Some will do, a lot more rice or bread if they want to tolerate it. I just eat whatever's fun. Like if it's fun, I'm going to eat it, man. Yeah, whatever's fun. But you know what? On a cheat day, I don't want to eat just crappy food. Like the idea of eating just like a bag of chips doesn't really appeal to me, but I want to eat maybe like a libretto pizza. You know what I mean? Like something really good, or like a really nice roti.
Yeah.
Which is like my favorite cheat food.
Really, a roti?
Yeah, I love roti.
Huh.
Roti's good. Yeah. And you know what? I feel good after I eat roti. It must be all the curry and whatnot. Probably mitigate some of the effects of the bread. And
isn't there like a lot of potatoes in that?
There are, yeah. Dude, I'm Russian. Need my potatoes. Potatoes. I grew up on potatoes like every day. I can't stop. I mean, I did for a long time. And although nutritionally there's not a huge, there's not really a great benefit to potatoes, but they taste good. So I'm gonna just keep on.
I'm not a big fan of potatoes, actually.
No, really? Aren't you,
Irish?
Aren't you Irish?
Yeah. I maybe that's what it is. Sweet potatoes, though, like my parents, actually, they tend to adopt some sort of amalgamation of whatever it is their children are eating. So like they eat sweet potatoes like fiends now. Like every time I go over there, it's like a giant skillet of.
Yeah, dude. Sweet potatoes are the new potato.
Yeah.
Like anywhere you go now, you have sweet potato fries, you got sweet potato this. So it's pretty good. I mean, they're really nutritious. They're a lot better for you than regular potatoes. I mean, I suppose if you deep fry them in shitty oil, they're probably not that great. But one of my favorite post-workout meals or suggestions is, some really good like grass-fed beef or some other, protein source, fish, what have you, and sweet potato. Fantastic. Huge benefit for recovery and tasty. So, sweet potatoes are pretty easy to make. You can boil them, you can mash them. My favorite is throwing them in the oven and, kind of baking them, and they turn out really nice.
So I'm working a contract in the morning right now that requires me to be in a secure area. It's at the airport. So like I have to go through security.
Yeah.
And so then you're subjected to, if you have not brought your food with you, your airport friendly food, you have to eat whatever is behind the security gate, which is basically like not so great, ridiculously expensive salads or like Tim Hortons. And so like I'm having their belt, bacon, egg, lettuce, tomato.
Oh yeah, the belt.
But without the bacon, for me, without the bacon.
Yeah.
And
why no bacon?
I don't eat meat. Did you know that?
Dude, you don't eat meat?
No, I had no idea. Vegetarian. I thought you knew that.
Whoa, let's explore this a little bit.
You offered,
I had no idea you didn't eat meat.
Yeah.
Damn.
I've been a vegetarian for 9 years now.
You know what? You're one of the few vegetarians that I didn't know was a vegetarian. Right? We're talking about that joke.
How do you know a vegan?
Yeah, how do you know vegan vegetarians at your party? How can you tell? You don't have to. They'll tell you in about, a minute. So, yeah, that's amazing, man. I was a vegan, vegetarian kind of thing for about 6 years. So
yeah, you were raw food vegan.
I was raw food vegan for a while too.
You went to the other, extreme.
Yeah. You know what? I think it was probably the healthiest because I was eating a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, no processed food. But when I was a vegan, I was eating a ton of processed food, right? Like soy cheese and fake burgers and all this other stuff that they have on the marketplace.
It's the easy route.
Yeah,
you go to the vegetarian section, you're like, oh, look, all that stuff that I used to eat in friendly vegetarian format.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? It's like, if you're going to be a vegetarian, I mean, I don't think you should be eating things that remind you of meat. You know what I mean? Like, try to trick you into thinking that they're meat. There's something in that which seems really silly to me, that you're eating, soy burgers and whatnot.
It's a weird one. Like, I think it's like, if you're going to either eat those or nothing, eat those, obviously. Well,
yeah, I mean, but it feels like your body wants this thing, right? Like your body wants this thing that looks and resembles, meat, because that's kind of the way you're set up. And you're trying to, give it something that resembles it. And I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, and I think beyond that too, there's this like whole texture taste thing that they're replicating through a very, very like processed thing. It's like, do you understand that what you are eating is so far removed from anything natural? Like if your whole thing is, being more connected with nature, that's not it. Like my sister, I was just home and, she's seeing a new nutritionist now, and it's like basically what they described was pretty much, it sounded like paleo without saying the word paleo. And so she was like, yeah, I'm not eating any, like she barely ate any of that soy processed stuff anyways, but she said now she's done with it. And one of the things was, especially for women, there's like the soy and the amount of hormones and stuff that are pumped in there. And she was saying like, when she would like have her menstrual cycle, it would just like completely throw her off. And since she has cut out any of that soy processed stuff, it's a lot better for her.
Notices. Yeah, man.
I was like, whoa, that's like scary that your hormones were that thrown off.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, food is a drug.
Yeah.
Right. I don't remember who said this, but every food is essentially a hormonal experience, right? Every food is a chemical experience. So there's no difference between a drug, like a pharmaceutical drug, and a food. I mean, they both, stimulate, chemical changes in your body. They stimulate different moods and states of mind. I mean, food is medicine. Food is a drug. So I think you have to be very tuned in to the way food makes you feel. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from a friend who was really smart about nutrition. She was really well read and had some great information behind her. And she told me once to journal my food, and don't necessarily worry about the calories, right? Like how much you're eating. Record how you felt afterwards, right? It's kind of weird listening to yourself. I'm sure you went through it when you started your radio gig, but it's funny when you are thinking and talking, right? You think it sounds a certain way, and when you hear it and, you can rewind it and play it back over and over again, it just sounds completely different.
I think I can't remember that actually. Now,
well, you're good. You're like a pro. You're like a
now. I always hear myself talking.
Yeah,
like it's constant. I'll be in front of someone. The worst is when I'm talking to someone and I'm watching them listen to me, and then I start thinking about how they're hearing it and what they're thinking when they're listening to me.
Right.
And then I start thinking about what they're thinking about, and I'm just like, stop it.
Your brain is ruined. You've been doing radio too long.
Yeah.
You're listening to yourself speak in the moment.
It's like you have to, the next step is, you have to get out of that. You first
drive yourself crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Drive yourself crazy.
Like, well, yeah. It feels like you're crazy. Why I don't smoke weed?
Why? Because it makes you crazy?
Because I will start doing that. I'll just start like looping my thoughts over themselves. And it's just like, no, there's no more like Brian in the moment. Because I'll be like, who?
Well, radio is all about being in the moment, right? That's what's so cool about it. I remember the first time I ever did radio, I was in university, and my friend ran the station, Trent University Radio. And he just kind of like gave me a show. I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I remember he actually brought me on, once to his show, and he kind of just threw me on the air. And it was just, like being thrown inside a swimming pool.
Yeah.
And you can't stop. Like
you gotta learn to swim.
You gotta learn to swim.
Yep.
And it was kind of cool. Like I really enjoyed that feeling, cause I'm a person who constantly self-analyzes and self-critiques. So it's nice to be in a moment and you don't have time to do that. Right. So it was a cool experience. I got really, really hooked on it. So doing a podcast is pretty sweet, after all these years to be back into it.
Yeah. It's funny because you were asking me where my beginnings are, and sort of you had this almost accidental being thrown into radio, but you realized you kind of like loved it. And in a way I wasn't conscious at the time of how much I loved radio. The first place I visited when I went to St. FX, St. Francis Xavier University, was the media center. So I was like, I want to write for the paper. I want to have a radio show. And then I got really into it. Like I was like the one person who's like, I don't want a music show. I want to play music, but I also want to talk about the news. And so I'd write like news scripts out, never having done this before, not having like a formal background or anything, just loving.
What do you think, man? Like we're in an amazing time right now where it feels like it's going back to the original magic of radio with all these podcasts, ours included, of course, all these podcasts, the ability to access anybody's opinion anytime, and the barriers that have fallen from actually producing really interesting, good content. Anybody, anywhere can jump on a laptop or not even and start their own radio show. And then someone across the world can listen to it. And just based on, its popularity on iTunes or just the word of mouth, you have the opportunity to be, heard. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah. Like it's one of the things that because people always ask like, why radio? And if you're going into school for it, like when I was in my master's, why radio? And I had to write a whole section of my thesis on it. And one of the things was it's the lowest barrier to entry. Like, you can go and pick up equipment for really, really cheap and do it. Like I teach, I just started teaching I teach a podcasting course, and I just finished one iteration of that. But someone just started one, and it was, he goes and he does public speeches. And so he was like, okay, I'm there with a mic. I'm just going to like have a recorder plugged into the board and record it and then put it out there. And I'm like, yeah, like you're talking about this very high level theatrical. He runs a theater company, and he has an audience already. I'm like, just put it out there. Like people who are into the theater world, they'll like it. And
some of my favorite podcasts now are done by comedians who are just really funny, obviously very observational people who are always interested in what's going on, very on topic and current. And their podcasts are phenomenal because you get a nice mix of humor, real talk, real conversation, and news, right? They're constantly surveying the news, and they're very open and critical, and they're obviously good at laughing about situations which can be quite heavy. So some of the best podcasts now are just straight up done by comedians because they're just, that kind of personality. And it's really cool because, trying to get radio from radio, whatever, the terrestrial radio or news from TV and things like that has really kind of lost the plot. It's not very informative. It's definitely not very entertaining. It seems to just stimulate some sort of, fear or, irrational response. Oh, there was a cool little nugget that was put out. I don't remember where the study was from, but you could probably find it if you Google Fox News viewers are dumber than other news viewers. Yeah, I tweeted this on the Academy Alliance, and there was this piece that came out that Fox News viewers, right? Fox News, very conservative, if you guys don't know, news channel, very inflammatory too, just like blatantly. Their viewers have IQs on average 20 points lower than viewers of other news outlets. And it's a great article. So, I would encourage anybody just to read it and retweet it. And really the point that I guess the theory that they have as to why this is the case is because they say that people who are less intelligent, they tend to be very emotional, and they tend to react emotionally first before being critical or rational. So Fox News, according to what they say, panders to these very, low level primal responses, fear and things like, oh my God, the terrorists are going to get us. And, we have to protect our freedom. And, that kind of boils it down to these really hair trigger emotional kind of concepts and reactions. And that's what it panders to. Whereas those who get their news elsewhere are, they're more critical, they're more analytical, and they're not just kind of reacting and being, primal with their whole, analysis of world events. So really funny that, you know, these guys like 80. So the average IQ, I believe, was 80, right? So 80 is 10 points away from the, you know, the divider between,
like above the median, below the median.
Yeah. It's like, what is it? 70 is mentally challenged.
Oh, what, really?
Yeah. So 70 is mentally challenged. And so 80 is, I think, the quote in the article, in the piece was like, you know, we've never seen a population who, you know, is so clearly hovering above the line of, like,
gosh,
you know, mentally, incapable. It was hilarious to read that. And of course, everybody kind of knows this, that like Fox News is ridiculous and people who watch it and take it seriously are, you know, kind of silly.
See, I wonder, it'd be interesting to study, you know, Fox News from when it began, because it's one of those questions where you then go kind of the chicken or the egg question. Did Fox News start really low level?
Did it make people dumb?
Yeah. Or did they just go, hey, there's a big audience of people who, if we make them feel smart because they're watching a news show,
sure,
and they get it because we speak to their emotions, then they're going to be loyal customers.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, it's like if McDonald's was like, they started off and they were making like kind of healthy food, and then they were like, wait a minute, people want to eat crap, and we'll make crap,
sure, and
people will just keep eating our stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know why Fox News is the way it is. I mean, Fox as a network is kind of weird, right? Because they do a lot of programming which is not conservative by any means. They were the Simpsons were on Fox, or still on Fox. Married with Children, which was kind of a controversial show at its time when it came out, right? And like Family Guy and things which are loved by, I would say, like liberal, you know, free thinking people, like all these TV shows and programs. And there's a lot of violence on there. I mean, they have the UFC and other things like that. Oh man, this is going to start like a Twitter trollathon.
Yeah.
No, please don't. I couldn't handle that feedback.
We like feedback, though.
I like, yeah. That's what's sometimes like shitty about the internet, is that, you know, people will have their opinions, you know, and they'll just send them to you right away, completely unfiltered and anonymously, which is the worst.
Did you see this? They're debating now within the news, and I think part of this is because of what happened in Newton and all the comments coming out and people sort of spreading misinformation.
Sure.
Like when the killer's brother was a suspect, everyone's like, this is the killer. And the brother's completely out of state. And he's like, he's going through a tragedy. His mom and his brother are dead. And everyone's like, but in Canada, the question has now come out, if you are commenting on a news article, should it legally be mandatory that you identify yourself? I
think, you know what? It's tricky, but I think that in an ideal world, you're born and you're assigned your online ID, kind of like your social security number. And when you make a statement online or you put something out, I mean, it gets tied back to you.
Well, like, you know, I can see people coming out and be like, well, like freedom of speech, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, there's a variety of venues for you to speak anonymously. Why does it have to be on an official news blog?
It's tough. I mean, some people will not be able to fully express their point of view without it being anonymous. You know, there's too much fear or danger in doing so. But at the same time, it's just, you know, you go on YouTube or Twitter, and there's so much trolling that goes on, and it's kind of ridiculous. It really ruins, you know, the medium for me. We had an article, about the Academy. It was put on BlogTO, and it was an okay article.
Wasn't it? Was it in their like best of Toronto, best of CrossFit?
Yes, we did win best CrossFit in Toronto, by the way. But no, it was actually an article that came out before. This was around the time where we were, just opening up in Ossington. And so they had published a piece about us, just saying, hey, it's Academy Lions, CrossFit, blah, blah, blah.
And they're awesome for doing all that. Like, it's cool the amount of support BlogTO's kind of given.
Yeah, we were really happy to have that. I mean, I was initially happy. And then I started reading the comments, and the comments were ridiculous. Like, they were just people who are trolling, clearly trolling, and just really wanted to be shit disturbers. And there were some people on there that I kind of knew who they were, and they were really trolling. They made some really ridiculous comments about me personally, and also just how, like, my favorite comment was that we hire drug addicts and homeless people to be our coaches. That was by far, I thought, the most entertaining comment that I saw. And
was that targeted at like?
Well, it was someone who actually, I think, just had developed a hate on for us and was making a reference to the fact that we actually have a program for youth.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And street youth, people who have lived in shelters before.
You know, you help them out.
Yeah,
and
we
all
help
of a
them
sudden
out.
It's like, let's just go down the slippery slope.
Yeah, like it's ridiculous. I mean, I didn't even bother to comment on that because like it's silly to hear that. And I mean, it's just kind of a waste of public space, in my opinion, but what are you going to do about it? Right. It's something that's just kind of the way things roll, and people have to be really intelligent in the way they absorb information. And that's the one thing, is that I think we are becoming more intelligent as far as assessing people's opinions and understanding if they're really valid, if they're coming from a place of perspective rather than coming from a place of just, being kind of a dick.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the fact that there is a term for it, that there is a term trolling, and
right.
Most people know it. I mean, some people might listen to the podcast and be like, what's trolling? But probably 5 seconds after that, they've Googled it and now they know what trolling is, and now they're aware. I think
it's kind of like, trolling is like the new, he's just a hater. Right.
Yeah.
So when the whole, like, he's just a hater or she's just a hater thing came out, it's like, oh, okay, well, that person is not reasonable. All they want to do is just hate on you.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it comes through, and I was talking with a few women actually about sort of this being in a group and being outside of a group, and if you're outside of the group, hating on the group, or if you're in the group, hating other people that you think should be in the group but aren't. Like the example that we came up with was, because I was reading this thing and like it was one woman hating on another woman for defining what she thought feminism was, and there's this whole like movement of like,
oh my,
to be a feminist you have to do this, and one of the examples is like, oh, if you're not like this career oriented woman, if you just want to get married to a man and have kids,
you're not a feminist.
You're not a feminist. And it's like, no, like if you make a choice,
right,
and you follow through on your choice as a woman, that like define feminism for what you want it to be. And so we were talking about like people who are in these groups, and it's really easy to be like, well, you're not this. And it's like this, where does that come from? Like, why would you ever hate on someone for that?
People like to fight.
Yeah.
That's how we define ourselves. I'm doing a lot of reading into this topic of how we take information, how we process things. It seems like human beings are really very much set up to fight, to argue, to compare and contrast. That's kind of our gig. That's how we process information. We understand ourselves by what we are, but probably more by what we are not, right? So you look at any movements need, whether it's a movement of thought or spirituality or politics, you need an enemy. You need somebody to fight against, right? So that becomes really charged for that individual. You need something to essentially polarize two different points of view, right? So, when I see that stuff, it used to really upset me. When I catch it, I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, you're fighting over nonsense. Seeing it from maybe a little bit of a different perspective, I see that as a very natural process. For me, I don't prefer not to get caught up in it. As soon as you recognize it, it's something that you really should disassociate yourself from and see it for what it is.
Yeah. Like, I don't know about you, but I catch myself at certain points just starting to like get really critical of other people for things like, I don't know, like I was in Top Man. I was shopping for some stuff, and this girl in front of the line is like, what do you think of this tie? She shows me a bow tie. And I was just talking with someone about how like, I was like, I will only buy real bow ties, like bow ties that are clip-on. So I was like,
not a clip-on?
She was buying a clip-on, and I won't buy clip-on ties. I was
my God, there it is.
That's lame. And then so she's like, what do you think of this tie? Like, should this be, I'm buying it for a friend. Should it be shiny black? Because it was a matte black tie.
I think she was hitting on you, Brian.
Maybe. But I killed it because I'm like, well, if it was me, I wouldn't even be buying that tie because it's a clip-on.
Oh, man.
Like, I was like, well, where did that? She kind of looked at me and I was like, whoa, switch gears, help her out, like answer her question. What is wrong with you? So then I was like, well,
you blew it, man.
Could
have had her number.
Yeah. I just done. So I was like, what's your friend's color shirt? And like actually gave her some legitimate help. But I was like, really? Like, did you just try and pick a fight with someone over a clip-on?
You just like walked away. You're like, what? Fuck. Stupid.
You idiot. Yeah. It was weird, but like,
tie.
I'll catch myself like looking at things and at people and like what they're doing. And there's like a line between being helpful and being judgmental. And when it gets to the judgmental thing, I'm like, what the hell?
I learned that early on when I was in high school. I did a lot of stuff within the whole Buddhist tradition. Went pretty hardcore into studying that stuff. And any Eastern philosophy is essentially going to tell you to dismantle that part of your consciousness that judges, right? That's a huge barrier to personal enlightenment. As soon as you start judging, being overly judgmental or even somewhat judgmental of people, you're really setting yourself up for a low level existence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's a very powerful concept within that philosophy or in a lot of Eastern traditions, is that you need to understand how not to judge people, how to understand them, have kind of this unconditional feelings for them and wish them success and wish them love and all this other stuff, compassion, without actually, being like a hater. Right. So this was a pretty important concept to learn early on. And it's something that I think I struggled with back in the day. I still struggle with it, not from a theoretical point of view. Like I still think that's the way to go. It's something you have to really put into practice and really believe and live.
Yeah. Like when it's happening with me, like, I think the first part is like catching it, but now I'm like, in a way I'm kind of worrying because a lot of the times I'm not a judgmental person, and, or at least I like to think that I'm not a judgmental person and very accepting of people. And like, as long as your choices aren't hurting other people, I'm cool with them. And that's like a big thing I try and go with. And I try and say, like, if you can maintain a conversation with someone, then you can be there, like, let's say when they need you. Like, I know some people talk about like, oh, when you have that friend who's dating someone who just looks and seems like they're awful. I'm like, well, do you want to isolate that friend because they're dating someone shitty? Or do you want to be supportive and go, hey, I think you're an awesome person. I think you're this. I think you're that. And really build them up so that they maintain a confidence level where maybe they'll realize this isn't the ideal person for them, or maybe you're the one being ignorant and that is the right person. But either way, it's like, why would you isolate yourself from a friend? That's
probably the toughest thing to be in, where you clearly see that someone's making a bad decision. And, what do you do? Do you risk your friendship by telling them, hey, you're, that person you're with is kind of a douche? Or, do you kind of bite the bullet and just say, listen, this is my friend. They need to hear an opinion that may be contrary to, to what they're thinking right now. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's really tough. The whole judgmental thing, and that's a tough concept as well, because you don't want to be judgmental in the sense that, like, again, you're a hater. You're just judging people all day long because it's really appeasing some sort of deep insecurity and uncertainty you have about yourself.
Yeah. It's almost like that's actually good. Actually, that probably is going to help me very much, because now anytime I get, thank you. Anytime I get judgmental now, I'm going to go.
You're listening to.
Yeah, this is Brian's therapy session right now.
Therapy session.
Well, yeah, now anytime I feel judgmental, I'm going to go, what insecurity does this represent within me?
The thing is like, you have to be judgmental. Like, there's times where you need to judge things, right? If you're a judge, for example, you have to just,
if you're a judge, yes.
If you have a gavel and a robe, you probably need to judge people, because according to whatever, law, moral or otherwise, you need to determine if people are doing the right thing.
Well, especially with your own actions too. Like, if you're doing something, was this okay? Like, what I'm doing all right?
Oh, totally. I'm not saying like, I don't like being like a new age kind of hippie about it. It's like, just everything is light and love and this and that. It's not. Like, there's good and bad. There's yin and yang.
Yeah.
And it's important that you know what it is without having to be emotionally derailed by it. You know what I mean? So, like people will get into arguments and they'll judge the other person without really understanding where they're coming from. Well, you can disagree with somebody, but, you know, can you actually still have a sense of why you disagree, what their perspective is, even though maybe you think it's based on things you don't necessarily agree with? Can you understand where they're coming from? So one of the things that is really important to discern, again, this is on my list of things to do before you become enlightened, I guess, personally enlightened, is understand the difference between agreement and understanding. Because you don't necessarily have to agree with someone's position, but you can understand where they're coming from, and you can still be as productive as possible when you're trying to give them advice, right? So if it's like your best friend or whatever who's dating someone who's kind of an asshole, well, you don't want to kind of, if you upset them, if you kind of come at them with this judgmental point of view, they're probably not going to listen to you anyway. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But if you can be kind of skillful in the way you say, listen, you know what? I understand where you're at. Like, I understand that you love this person and this, I just want to give you my perspective. And it's not to tell you you're wrong. I think it's important because that's what friends do. Yeah. And I could be wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You and that's a really good setup there. Like, they might ask you, and one of my big indicators is like, is this scenario going to cause harm? And if it is, I think there's a bit of an imperative to be involved. If it's not, if it's just like kind of like a crappy thing, there could be a really good learning opportunity. And I think you want to be there to make sure the involved parties learn that. So like, I had a friend and I was just like, I think this guy is like kind of crappy. Some of the other people that are sort of in his circle have told me some things that I kind of trust. So I'm very weary of the situation. And the big thing I said to her was that I was like, you're an awesome person and you deserve to be treated well. And if you ever kind of think that maybe this person isn't treating you equally, I think you should sit down and have a conversation with them about that. Like, hey, we need to reevaluate our relationship or whatever it is. And so when shit did kind of hit the fan, right, and some crappy things sort of did come to light, I was still there. She was like, oh, he's been really supportive before in this relationship. He's the first I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk to him. And I was like, sweet. Like, now she can learn from that, maybe not to, like, sometimes to read the signs and stuff. Yeah.
Well, you give advice and you want people to take it because you think you're right. The thing is, people kind of need to make their own mistakes sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Or maybe you're the type of person that will not learn from anybody else's mistakes. You've got to be there yourself. I'm kind of one of those people, and I'm trying to morph into this person who can maybe look at other people's difficulties and learn from them first instead of having to go through it myself. I think you just go through life a little bit more enjoyably that way.
I think that's like the youngest child thing. Like, my little sister's always like, how did you not get in trouble growing up? And she was like, I asked her this and she's like, I looked at you and your older sister and I just didn't do the stuff you two did. She was like, it's not like I didn't.
What's she doing now? She like super successful.
Yeah. She's in a master's for library sciences at McGill.
Yeah, it's funny.
Oh, and her band just got number 52 of the top 103 songs.
Really? What's her band?
Loon Choir.
Loon Choir.
Loon Choir. They debuted on CBC Radio 3.
Oh, nice.
They went to number 2 on the charts.
I'm sure after this show, she's gonna jump up to number 1.
I hope so. Like, I'm wicked supportive of her and her band, and I thought that was a really good perspective of like, oh, it was smart too. It's like, I'm just not going to do the things my older siblings did.
It's really smart. And I meet people who have that kind of naturally. And it's funny that they're able to model their behavior on other people, right? So they see, hey, this guy, my friend went through this, bullshit, and I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to I don't have to learn the lesson personally. Some other person will do that for me. It's, it's a precedent, I guess. And I think those people are the ones who succeed very naturally. Like, they'll end up exponentially growing rather than having to go through, a lot of personal warfare.
Yeah. And and they're really observant because they kind of try and get the lesson the first time. And also observing the successes too.
Sure.
Kind of like, for radio, one of the things I do is I find the shows that I love, and the things that they do well, I try and emulate. And the things that they don't do well, I try to avoid. Or the things that maybe they do well, I just don't like.
Right.
Don't do those kinds of things.
Yeah. It's specifically called modeling. So if you see someone with characteristics that, you yourself want to have, you try to figure out, well, what's that about? And how can I essentially install those within myself? So a lot of people who've maybe figured out how to be really successful in every single way, not just financially, personally, happily, they're able to look at what other people are doing and take that in and internalize it. That's a really, really good thing to do. And it's funny because I see it in a athletic context when, in particular, our Olympic weightlifting program, I've seen what happens when certain people come into a training session for the first time or at a competition for the first time with athletes who are far superior to them, right? They grow leaps and bounds in that one experience. They come back and they're already better. I can see how they lift. They look more confident. They're moving better. They see what's possible, and they see that other people are how well they're doing it. And they just instinctively start to adopt some of the physiology of that, other person that they've seen.
Yeah. Well, I think about, on Tuesday nights, we train with a current world record holder, former Olympian, Alex Varbanov. And like every person I hear after it, just, he'll talk and he'll say his stuff and they go, but when you watch him do an example of a lift, it is like, it's poetry.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
I love, and he'll catch me sometimes, like he'll be like, clean up your weights, like put them away. And a lot of times, like I'm so drawn into watching other people lifting,
right,
that he has to snap me out of it because he's like, yo, you gotta clean up your weights.
Well, that's what I really enjoy about Olympic weightlifting, because there's definitely a difference between the masters and the ones who are, still fairly novice. You can see it not necessarily in the weights that they lift, but in the grace of their movement. So I think looking at any type of physical expression as an art form or something that requires fluidity, grace, economy of movement, that's a really good perspective to take. Because if something physically looks ugly, right? If you're running ugly, or if you're lifting ugly, or if you're doing gymnastic movements, body weight movements ugly, technique's not good. Your biomechanics aren't good. You're probably going to get injured, and you don't look too good doing it. Mm. So it's really important to have, for lack of a better word, a sense of style. And it's funny when you see some sports, maybe like basketball or, some other team sports or minimal sports like soccer, everybody kind of has a personal style in the way they play. And usually players are loved because they have that style or that flair or whatever. And, and what style is essentially is a command of your physical resources.
Yeah.
In such a way that's like badass. Like you look like you have your world under control.
Well, dance is I think the perfect example.
Yeah. Dance is my favorite context to look at physical movement. Dance and maybe martial arts, but especially dance.
And the two, it's funny how similar the two really are. Like I have a friend who's training in capoeira.
Yeah.
And
capoeira is completely the two mixed together.
Oh yeah. And he talks about, people come in there and they try and muscle through things when they're doing one of their sort of circle sparring sessions. And it's cool. That's what you're doing. But he's like, no, there's sort of a game and an art to this.
Exactly.
That's unique to capoeira. And it's you got to kind of get in that. You got to get in this sort of dance expressive mentality.
Sure. Absolutely. My favorite way to change people's minds about their movement. And it's generally people who are doing, workouts for time, specifically CrossFit, who really want to rush through things, and they may not care as much about technique or, expressing the movement well technically, or even in a way that reduces their risk of injury. So they end up just kind of, struggling through and trying to finish workouts as quickly as possible. So I usually like to put them in the context of dance. When you go see a performance of somebody dancing, how do you analyze the performance? You never hear anybody saying, oh, that was a really great dance because, they got through it really fast. You know, they did the dance for time. No, they did it beautifully. The movement was great. It was graceful. They had complete command of their body in space. Whenever you're doing, like, let's say a CrossFit workout, the same rules need to apply, because if you look like you have command of your body and what other physical objects that are outside of your body that you're controlling, a barbell, a kettlebell, gymnastic rings, whatever, if you look like you have command of it, you are doing well. And from that perspective, from that base, now you can increase your efficiency. You can try to do it faster. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's really what in coaching anyways, what I try to get across to people. The first thing is you need to command movement, your own body, and then, any objects that are outside of your body. And once you have that command, it's totally cool to go for it, right? To push it to the max, but only until you have command, right? Yeah. So if you do it too quickly, right? If you try to run before you can walk, you're going to get injured for sure. You're basically shortchanging any progress you have. So this is a huge thing. If anything, you know, we can offer in these like conversations and stuff that we do at the academy, it's that. That's why it was so awesome to hook up with Alex Varbanov, who is running, I think, a session as we speak downstairs, and to see how he works. I mean, this is a guy who attained, you know, the highest of heights, you know, out of what, 5 billion people, he was the best at his sport. That's something, you know, that's an amazing achievement, to be the best at something in the world. So, you know, for those who don't know, Alex won 4 world titles. He's won an Olympic bronze. He, has 10 world records. 1 still stands. And so he was, you know, the best of the best. And I look at him and I actually do a lot of modeling based on what I observe. And he's someone who takes things very slow, especially amongst new lifters, many of which have come through CrossFit. And he tries to make sure that they have full technical command of the movement before any weights are really added, right? Because weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, is about speed and precision and coordination, flexibility, all these things. You cannot just muscle things up. So he is very much, you know, a coach who is just trying to make sure people, you know, take their time with a movement, really absorb it into their nervous system. And once they have command, well, boom, you can start letting it fly, let the weights go. And looking at a master like he is, a coach like he is, it's really easy to be inspired by that level of understanding and command and performance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking with this friend who was doing capoeira, and we were talking about like putting yourself into vulnerable situations.
Right.
And that was something we talked about on episode 3, was the idea of vulnerability. And I was saying sort of, and today how we were talking about mistakes, it's like the movement for Olympic weightlifting is so foreign. The idea of forcing something with your muscles, we've been doing that for like our entire lives. You know, as little kids, like doors are really heavy, for example, and then we're pulling groceries or something like that. But Olympic weightlifting, it's so much about, you know, technique plus strength, not just strength. Yeah. And I was saying you have to go to this uncomfortable spot where you really, really focus on technique. And maybe you're like, but I could lift these 85, 95 pounds with my muscles and do my version of, let's say, a snatch or something. And it's like, cool. But what about when you're at 170? You know, can you muscle those up?
Right. Exactly.
No, you need that technique. And so you fall on your ass. You know, you fuck up. Yeah. Like I fall a lot in these lifting sessions, and I have like
you fall on your ass kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, I think you know that when I was a kid, I had a brain tumor, and so my balance is like messed up, and so I've accepted that like balance, for example, is something.
Do you find that the weightlifting and the stuff that we do here, does that help you with your like kinesthetic?
Oh, totally. Like it's like walking in like standing on one foot, for example.
Right.
Used to be impossible for me. And, you know, we force us to do pistols. And I still kind of suck at pistols, but like, it's one of those things where the amount of control I have of my body, cause I get off balance sometimes just standing. Like I'll just be standing sometimes and I'll
just
start
fall
falling over. And it's like, I know I've like freaks people out at like a line in a grocery store. Cause all of a sudden like, who's this like person falling into me? But like, for example, on my bike, like I bike everywhere in the city and I'm like one of those dudes now at the lights who can like stay on his pedals and like balance on his bike.
Yeah. I try to do that. I'm like, I can do it for like, I don't know, like 7 seconds.
Oh, I've got like a good yellow to red to green hold time.
It's funny biking because I've been, I bike everywhere now, and the little games you play to keep things interesting as you bike with, in the city.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm big on if somebody passes me, I'm just like, I want to pass them and try to, do these little races. Like, no one can pass me. I have to be in the lead. The bike thing is, staying on the bike at a standstill is a good one. I try that one.
My one is, my big one right now, especially because I have a bike ride to a pickup for this contract that I was saying that I'm working. So 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm biking every day. And you're just like kind of cold and you're miserable and you don't want to exert a lot of energy. So my thing is biking to the place and never having to stop pedaling. So not necessarily running lights, but observing everything around me to whether time the lights properly, like time your ride properly, or if it's like stop signs and stuff, or like one of my favorites is I like bomb it down this intersection. It's Beverly and Queen. And I'm like coming onto Queen Street. And so I look at the reflection of the stores, and looking at that reflection, I can see the cars in advance.
Right.
And like looking and timing it and being like, okay, can I go into this intersection without stopping? My mom, I know, is freaking out listening to this right now. Like, oh my God, my son is going to kill himself. But like, I have like, I maintain my bike. I have good brakes, but it's, can I ride without
That just reminds me my brakes are shit. I've almost like gone, head over handlebars just in the back of a car, stopped abruptly.
Oh yeah. You need your brakes like.
You wear a helmet, right? I don't wear a helmet. I do some silly shit. Here's my latest game.
Please write in, tell Danny to wear a helmet. Like,
yeah, no, I know I'm going to get like 1 million tweets now.
Yeah. Danny, what the hell?
Yeah. And when I crash and split open my dome, I'm going to have like 1 million I told you so's. So, my favorite thing to do lately is I'm a big like hands-free rider. I like to ride without my hand, like not touching the handlebars.
I can barely do that.
Oh, really? It's pretty fun. And, I usually carry a big backpack, so I kind of like have to do it just so my back doesn't hurt. And my accomplishment lately has been getting from basically Dufferin and Dundas, right? Where I used to live, Dufferin and Dundas, to the academy, which is Queen and Ossington, without using my hands completely. And I've done it several times, and I can even turn. Like I can make 90-degree turns.
That's something I'd be terrified to do.
Yeah, I should GoPro it because it's pretty exciting.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not kidding you. It's something I actually was really.
That's a big thing. People GoProing their city rides.
Yep. Yeah. It's pretty badass. You can turn like an everyday experience into, a cool POV, I guess. But yeah, maybe I should GoPro one of these. It's really not that impressive when you look at, what other like actual skilled people are doing.
But see, I'm impressed. So depending on who your audience is.
Yeah. Well, at least one person's impressed. But the topic, I guess, is, just the funny little games that you play. Yeah. When you're just trying to remain unbored. And that's what I found because I would, bike early morning to the academy at like, I don't know, 6 a.m. or earlier and just be very quiet out. And I need to keep my brain occupied. So I just invent these little games like, I'm going to.
Yeah. Cause that's one scary thing I find about biking is you very quickly can like drift in your own head because you've got this rhythmic foot over foot. Like if anyone jogs, one of the great things about jogging is that you can like, you almost have to like look internally at yourself. I feel like jogging just forces this meditative state, and biking, unless you're on like these, 80-kilometer no like paths through forests, you're kind of forced to, you have to be like, no, I have to remain vigilant.
Yeah. We have to do it. I mean, there's a fundamental need for our brains and our nervous system to remain engaged and to do things that have novelty to them. We're actually wired to be distracted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're essentially descendants of people who are really good at, recognizing when unusual things were in their environment, right? So our ancestors, if something popped up, like a wild animal that was about to attack them, they were really good at recognizing that. So our brains are very adapted to be distracted. And they're also very adapted to be novel, to play, to have games, to have things that are changing. That's why in a fitness setting, we were just talking about jogging. I'm not a huge fan of things that put you on a linear path for too long, right? Like jogging, I think people fall into this trap where they'll kind of do the same route or the same kind of activity over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the return on that investment becomes less and less and less. So, my favorite recommendation to give people who are just looking, this is actually a good time to drop this because, you know, everyone's going to be making their New Year's resolution pretty soon, is make sure if you're doing like a really, if you want to get into fitness again, or do something a little bit different or get better results quickly, do something that changes constantly varied. There's the whole philosophy again. But, I'm a big proponent of like urban park running where you go through some kind of like off the grid type stuff and things that you're not very familiar with. And you constantly have to adapt and change and kind of, move your feet, left and right and side to side and jump things and kind of, adapt to your environment moment by moment by moment. That has a huge effect on your nervous system. That really, really tunes you into your body much better than just running or biking on straight road, right? That's the mark of a good activity, in my opinion, is that if you can pick something that forces you to be in the moment, it's a good activity. CrossFit, I think, has a huge benefit to anybody who really needs that, to be in the moment, because you're so connected to your activity because it's so intense. You really can't think about anything else. I find when I'm running long distances, before, I don't really do it too much now, but when I was doing it before, my mind would have to go somewhere else. My mind would have to go to, some bullshit that was spinning in my head, or I had to keep myself entertained, or of course you had to, listen to music or something else. And that's not the best activity. You want the activity that kind of puts you in the moment, and the only thing you can focus on is that particular thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people need like a combination of both too. Like you need some sort of introspective time and stuff. But if your goal is to be,
then just introspect. Like I'm saying, like just then meditate.
Like if your goal is to be improving your physicality and your nervous system and all that kind of stuff, it's like when you were saying that constantly varying things, I thought about one of the things as you get older to combat Alzheimer's that they suggest is it's learning new things.
Absolutely.
Like it can even be like reading books, doing puzzles. Like my grandfather, he recently turned 81 and he is so like whip smart. Mm-hmm. But every time he goes on a vacation, he goes to a cultural spot and he does tours in museums, and like the dude never stops learning.
Yeah.
And he's the grandfather who's always sending me news articles and stuff. And I'm just like,
you got a badass family, man.
Yeah. I love them so much. They're like, I won't be spending Christmas with them, unfortunately. So they can listen to this podcast and feel like I'm there. And that's an equivalent.
Warmed by your voice.
But it's the same thing as like with your body. And I think maybe that's why I got like so into CrossFit, was that it's challenging my body the same way that I like to challenge my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really typical feeling with people who do this stuff. That's why it's maybe grown so fast.
You got to, you brought up an interesting thing that I haven't asked myself, but I want to ask you, and then you can ask me, which is, this might be our last episode before the new year. I think. I'm not sure, but if it is, New Year's resolution.
I didn't know. I'm not gonna cry. Yeah, New Year's
resolution. Do you have one?
Not really. I don't like New Year's resolutions.
Okay, I'm not big on them either.
I constantly make resolutions.
So like someone asked me like what's something I'm working on. So like,
I don't know, man. It's, right now I'm really trying to slow down. My mind works very quickly, and I tend to get myself into a lot of different projects and a lot of different things. And so my goal right now is to recognize the priorities and the really important stuff and just put more energy into those. So, luckily this podcast is definitely one of those things, but it's to just really identify the stuff that is the most important to me and do that first and try to, just be really good, not spread things too thin, Actually, it's not a resolution, but one big thing I'm big on at this point in my life, just learning new skills. That I haven't maybe up until this time learned that I wish I had learned. So I spent the weekend doing a speed reading course. So that's one of my big things right now because I figured I looked at kind of all the things I wanted to accomplish in my life in general and especially in the next year. And I kind of boiled it down to this ability to absorb information. Mm-hmm. There's so much I want to study. There's so much I want to learn about, whether it's CrossFit or just, the mind or neurology and things like this, that I need to read way, way, way more and way quicker. So my goal is to learn how to do this thing called photo reading, which is a completely different, setup for me in terms of a reading style and just kind of absorb information a little bit quicker. Cause I figure if I can do that, then, I can be pretty gangster at all the other stuff that I do.
Yeah. It's funny. You speed up in absorbing information. So it's almost like you can slow down to process it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. It was a great scene. It's Short Circuit 2. Remember that movie Short Circuit with the robot? Johnny Five? Oh, you haven't seen this? Okay. So we'll put the link in the show notes, but this basically defines my whole feeling on reading right now. But basically this robot, is going through, it was filmed actually in Toronto where this robot goes to the world's biggest bookstore. And he's just like, oh, input. He's like so excited to see all these books.
Right.
And so the robot can read a book in like a second and get full comprehension, right? This is like the dream. This is exactly what I think everyone would want to do. So anyway, so he's going through the world's biggest bookstore and he reads like basically, half their books in like 10 minutes. Right. And then his maker kind of pulls him out and the robot's like all sad. He's like, oh, I just needed another 35 minutes to read every book in there. And I'm like, man. That's amazing. So, that's kind of the level I want to get to is, just to be able to read a book, super fast.
Super fast reading level.
Super fast. What about you? What's your resolution? You can't take mine because mine's pretty good.
I can't. And yeah, I'm the same with you. It's like, if you're constantly working on things, why wait till the new year? So it's like, what am I working on? And I think it's with emotions. Like we were talking about, I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel sort of like judgmental and stuff like that. And I find I'm getting really, really emotional about absolutely everything. Like I'm getting really emotionally attached to all these things. And
it's about like work stuff or what?
Like pretty much anything. Like I meet people and I feel like I like instantaneously fall in love with
you're
people.
like an ecstasy kind of attached.
It's
like you love everything.
It's kind of like I love everything or I hate everything. There's nothing that's not. And I'm normally a pretty extreme person with that kind of stuff, but I'm like, wow, this is like an overwhelming amount, like more than's usual for me. Sure. And all my friends, like if you personally know me, like I'm normally a relatively emotionally intense kind of person. And we're talking about that, I think, in one of our episodes, how I think I scare people off sometimes on a romantic level because I'm like, I love you so much. And it's like, whoa, like we just met. So I think it's being responsible with that. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, if I'm like totally think I'm like absolutely like falling head over heels for someone, go, what's like really going on here? And is that going to sustain? Or like in 2 weeks, is this person going to be like, oh my gosh, you're so sweet. You're doing so nice things. And then I'm like, oh yeah. That intensity's gone.
It's so funny. It just seems so silly that you have to hold back on emotion sometimes with people. It's like if you really like them, you can't just say it right away. I mean, maybe some people can, but for the most part, there seems to be this like thing where if you come on to someone too strong, like the opposite of what maybe you think should happen happens. Like they get turned off. I don't know. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it's about some deeper insecurity that we all have is like, whoa, if this person really likes me, they must be fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that. How
could anyone love me that much so quickly?
Yeah. It's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a funny one. it just sometimes makes me think the world is a little strange, that it takes so much,
really strange.
Yeah. It takes so much time to navigate through, this emotional stuff. But let me ask you something, because this is a huge kind of field of fascination for me in terms of like this like emotional control. I don't mean like in some sort of like manipulative way, but this ability to really understand your own emotions as kind of a biofeedback mechanism. It's like some primal survival mechanism, and how we can use those to our advantage. Cause, you can, like, I love emotions. Emotions take you on a ride. Emotions make you feel like you're in the moment. I mean, there's some, like, nothing will compare to that feeling. But sometimes, it's like the tail wagging the dog. Like, you have no control over them and you just become a mess.
Right.
Right. So, it's kind of one of those things that I think is always going to be a struggle. But, do you want to be in a place where you can be completely in control?
Well, I don't know, because I don't think you can control your emotions. And
you don't think you can?
Fair enough.
We'll disagree.
That's cool.
See, I don't agree with you. I understand what you're saying, but I definitely don't agree with you.
Well, at least my focus isn't there. My focus is on, if I'm feeling something, like trying to understand why I'm feeling it and be responsible with what I do about it. So it's like, if I'm starting to feel like I was in a conversation with someone and I started to feel really, really agitated.
Okay.
And so I just was like, okay, you're feeling agitated, go with it. And then afterwards I brought it up and I said, hey, like when we were talking about this, all of a sudden I got really, really agitated. And then we kind of had a conversation, and they said, oh, like, what were you reacting to what it was I was saying? Were you reacting to how I was saying it? And like, I realized it was sort of a past issue, and it reminded me of that past issue.
Right.
So I was like, there's that. And, the idea of, like you said, like holding back sometimes, on like what we're saying. And I'm trying to like, really understand what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling it, so that I can communicate it. I can say to someone like, listen, like I did this. I went out, a while ago, I went out on a date with someone, and, it seemed to go really well. And we were talking, and then all of a sudden our conversation kind of went away. And I was like, oh, okay, it's over. I shouldn't say anything. And I was like, you know what? Maybe it is, but I want to say how I feel. Like I'm feeling something. So I sent this person a text, and I said, hey, I know we're just getting to know each other, but I think you're really cute and pretty awesome. And I get that you're, maybe really busy right now. And then they text me back like, oh, thank you. Like, yeah, I am really busy. And I was like, cool. Like if you want to keep things going when things chill out, awesome. But I was like, said my piece. I can move on. I know who I am. I know what I'm feeling.
That's good. I think that's, it's important that, sometimes you realize, well, it's not going to happen. It's not meant to be, but I'm just going to say it anyway. What do I have to lose?
Exactly.
And what's the harm? It's like, hey, you know what? I think you're awesome. Cool. Maybe it makes someone happy, it doesn't work out for you, but who the fuck cares, right?
Yeah. It was one of those things where I was going, me saying this is not going to hurt anybody. So why would I not do it?
Yeah. It's like maybe we should be more like that. It's just like, fuck it. If I like you, I'm not going to hold back. I'll tell you, even if it means that you will end up not liking me or it creeps you out. It's like, you should be kind of upfront with your emotions. I think it's an interesting topic, because I really feel that emotional control is a huge thing that people have to learn to, master themselves and in turn kind of master any other successes that they want to have. It's one thing that I think all of us take for granted, of how important emotions are. And also, how much control we have over them. So like, this is why I say I kind of disagree that you can't control your emotions. You absolutely can control your emotions. And there's this,
define what you mean by control here.
Well, I mean, okay, a lot of it comes from perspective, right? You can get really angry in a moment. So for example, I heard this in a book I was reading. You get cut off, right? You get cut off, you're driving, and you get really angry because that person's cut you off. And that anger is real and you want to express it. But let's say, you're omniscient and you get to see, or you later learn that that person who cut you off was, rushing their wife to the hospital. right? Because she was pregnant, she's about to deliver. Well, your anger would immediately diffuse, mainly because you've gained some sort of additional perspective. So that's a great example of how emotions are completely within the realm of control. You just have to understand how to perceive them to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
And there's this kind of default logic system in that you never really know why somebody does something. They may seem irrational, but they may have a rational reason. So this comes back to this whole idea of, I disagree, but I understand.
Yeah.
Right? So the reason this is important, in my opinion, is because I feel like the mind is very much like an operating system, right? And so for any Mac users or even PC, I guess, you know how you have that little like activity monitor? You know, you punch it up and it tells you that like Excel is using like 30% of your memory and like, you know, internet's using like 20%. When your computer crashes, right? When your computer crashes, you have too many applications running, usually, right? So I feel when you have negative emotions, let's say you feel hatred for somebody. Like you can't forgive somebody for something that's happened long in the past. You hold on to grudges. You hold on to these emotions that essentially anchor you to a place or to a person. Every time you can't process those things, they just clog up your memory. They make everything else run really poorly. You know, they kind of clog up the gears. So I feel like every time you release one of these applications, like let's say, you know, you're really angry at your fucking friend for some bullshit that he pulled a couple years ago, and you have every reason to be angry. He was an asshole. But if you don't kind of release it, then you're just kind of fucking yourself.
Yeah, that's holding you back.
It's holding you back. So, you know, it's, I really feel, cause I've had moments where, you know, like I've really tried through, let's say, meditation or some sort of like self-hypnosis, go in and look at a particular incident, something that was like on my mind. You know, it never really went away. It kept on coming back for some weird reason in the middle of, you know, in the middle of a bus ride or a conversation, this like memory would come back. And I'm like, what's that about? Like, what is that doing for me? And I would go in and I just like consciously try to release it and be like, all right, let me try to, rationalize this a bit more and try to understand where it is. And it felt like once I had released it, like the weight of it just completely came off my shoulders. And it felt like my brain was actually, you know, much happier and more functional, right? Tension was gone. And that was a really, you know, big insight into this whole thing where if we just constantly hold on to stuff, if we don't learn to develop kind of an amnesia, you know, for things that really don't benefit us anymore, well, you know, that's kind of one of those things that I think that people really, really have to look into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 2 years ago, I made a conscious effort to work on giving people feedback. Right. And part of that is recognizing when there's just something that you're dealing with on your own and there's no point to talk about it. But then also when there is a point to talk about it, when it is something that should be discussed, maybe someone's like done you a wrong or they're doing something that's causing harm, that it's beneficial to discuss that, and it lets you move on, because they said what will happen if you don't is you'll develop resentment over small things. You know, you hear this with roommates all the time. Something little, because you hold on to it, festers and becomes something huge. And had you just talked about it, had you gone through that slight uncomfortability, and usually I find after the fact, usually, at least in my case, you become closer with that person. They're like, oh yeah, thanks.
I agree.
Like you brought it up in this really good way. You said, hey, you know, there's this thing I want to talk to you about. It's kind of bothering me. And I'm like, yeah. Like I'm your friend. I don't want you to be bothered. What's up? Or I'm your roommate. I don't want you to be bothered. And then you talk about it. And like you said, you never completely know. So they might have been doing something that you perceived as this really negative thing, but maybe they thought they were being helpful.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I've learned is that everybody is doing the right thing all the time.
Yeah, like nobody does something to like they think what they're doing, or you want to do something that's you at least perceive as beneficial.
Yeah, you generally make the choices that you think are the best at the time. Given the tools that you have, you generally make the choices which you think are the best. And now, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not the case. They're probably not for the best, or you just don't have the tools or the faculties or the education or whatever the case may be. to make a decision that other people will agree is good. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that everybody is trying their best.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't mean they're doing it. They're making something of it. It just means they're trying. And to me, once I kind of understood that, I started to look at the people around me a lot different in the sense of, you know what? Again, I may disagree with what you're doing or what's happening. I understand it from a human perspective. It's like, hey man, you know, you gotta respect, you know, your game. You gotta respect that you're trying. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's kind of like that analogy or that story of, you know, whatever. It's like Jay-Z is, you know, he's a crack dealer and now he's this like, you know, successful entrepreneur and entertainment mogul. And, you know, back in the day, he was just struggling to do what he could given the resources he had. And that's pretty cool. You know, you know, he had game, right? In the same way that someone on Wall Street doing it a legit way had game, right? That's in people. Nobody wants to be shit. Nobody wakes up saying, I want to have a shit life. They want to have a good life. And sometimes the choices they make, they don't lead to that result. But I think in their mind, they've made some sort of, I guess, conjugation that this choice will lead to good things for them down the road.
Yeah. And if you're perceiving, you know, a deviation from that, or you're going, hey, I know, you know, you're maybe it seems wrong. There's probably, like you said, there's probably an element that they're just not seeing. And by giving someone feedback rather than like some judgment, but giving them some genuinely something that can help them, it might help progress them on that course, and it's going to help you progress on that course.
Totally. You know, I've had to go through it a lot in coaching. Not everyone's going to listen to you. Not everyone agrees with you. You know, I've had to tell people some pretty honest things about like, hey, you're doing this really poorly. You're doing it wrong. You're trying to rush through something or you're going to get hurt. And they don't really want to listen. I mean, you have to still say, like, this is again, you don't agree, you don't judge. You have to say the things you have to say from the perspective of, you know, I'm a professional and I have to make sure this person understands, you know, my perspective as a professional. And, they're not always going to listen, but you kind of do your best to make sure that they do. And, you know, it's important again that anytime you, in these interactions, you get overly hostile or angry or you're kind of on an emotional hair trigger, that tends to kind of, you know, block up the whole interaction. That tends to make the whole thing less productive than you really want it to be. Right. And it's one of those things where, you know, whether it's in coaching or trying to understand your relationships or trying to understand yourself, again, having command of these things, of these actions, actually being able to take a step back from yourself and understand how to react in the moment to things, that tends to define people as either happy, successful, achievers kind of thing, versus just people who are kind of at the whim of their emotions or are completely being kind of tossed around by life instead of being more in control of their lives.
We got to give a shout out to our sponsors as well.
Chad Magazine, Chad Quarterly. You can visit their website. It's spelled TCHAD. Sully Wong Sneakers and Sully Wong Bags and Accessories. Again, our good friend George Sully has launched that brand, and he does really good work on his brand and also in the community. So he's a big proponent of a lot of the projects we have at the Academy Lines. He really helped with the shirt Built a School in Africa, which is a very important for me. It was a project that got started 2 years ago just from an idea. So basically it's easy. You buy a shirt and you help build a school. And the shirts are available at thisshirt.com or better yet, come to the Academy Lines, say hi and buy a shirt. Academy of Lions, 64 Ossington in Toronto, academylines.com. Check it out. We post our workouts for free every week. Bikes on Wheels, our favorite people in Toronto. They have 2 bike shops, Kensington Market and Queen Street. If you need anything bike related or bike fashion related, go tell them you heard this podcast. Sean, Dan, let them know. Maybe they'll be extra super nice to you.
check us out on constantlyvaried.net. We're on iTunes. You can find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at CVaried. Thanks for listening.
See ya.